back to another episode of Remotely Speaking Up. And this week we are joined by Judy McCutcheon, organization redesign consultant, to talk about how we can empower leaders in a disruptive and digital age. Judy is also the head and one of the lead partners in Goblue Consulting Inc. And I'll turn it over to Judy to tell us a bit more about who you are and what you do.
Hi, Rochelle. Thank you for having me on this episode. That's an interesting question because so many times I have to remind myself of how fabulous I am because I'm fabulous. But I am really I am kindness, I am compassion. Most of all, I am love.
Yeah.
I am a mother of two awesome teenage girls. I am a passionate, very, very passionate activist. I don't want to say activist, but I'm really passionate about working with women and to really help them to get right with their money by adjusting their mindset, by letting them know that it's okay to have money. It's okay to have lots of money, as a matter of fact, and it's really okay to talk about it. So, I really want to normalize the conversation with women around money.
That's the first thing that you always pick up about you, Judy. Just in the time that I've known you, the word that always comes to mind is passionate. You are passionate about every single thing that you do. Everything you post, it comes right through. Just that passion that you have. And I know, especially as you mentioned, your passion for money, and particularly as well, your passion for leaders. And I know you speak a lot about leading from the heart, which is really, really crucial in this day and age as well. So tell us what that means for you then as an organization redesign consultant. What does that mean for you, and what does that mean for preparing leaders?
Well, we've had, if we have learned anything from the last set of events, hurricanes, volcanoes, pandemics, if we have learned anything from that, is that we have to lead differently to get our organizations to bounce back from all of those events. So it really is about having a mindset and an attitude that says, this is the business as usual is not going to work, but it is really about working with my people to get them to a certain point. But to be able to get to doing that, you have to start with you. You have to start with you. It starts with you having the right mindset, having the right attitudes. Because one thing that we have to understand is that our thoughts creates our feelings. Those feelings create the actions that we take, and that gives us the results that we have. So the first thing that we have to do is mind our thoughts. What are we thinking? What are we saying? What are we feeling? What are we doing? And we have to adjust that in ourselves to be able to help our employees to adjust. So as a redesign consultant, what I will do is I'm really passionate about helping companies to be profitable through their people, procedures, and processes. So I would go in and I would work with you to get your culture right, because really and truly one of the first things about leading really is having the right culture, having the people with the right mindset to be able to give you what you're looking for out of them, for you to get the results that you want. So as a redesign consultant, I work with your people, I work with your processes, and I work with your policies and procedures.
Wow, Judy, I need to get that t-shirt. I'm going to put that on a shirt if you don't mind. You can copyright me for it. Mind your mind. I love that. And you're right, it's so important because I know in this age, one of the things that we've seen as HR and management professionals is that most companies struggle with the mindset side of things. The technology is one thing, adjusting to this disruption. Speaking, you can speak about that as much as you want, but if you don't have the right mindset, you're not going to get very far and your people are going to be extremely miserable.
That's right, for sure, for sure. My coach always says that you have to watch what you think,
Mm,
mind your mind, be careful of the thoughts that you put
yeah,
out there.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
I totally, fully embrace that. So what does leadership look like then for you then? What does leadership look like in a digital and disruptive age? What should it look like, I should say?
Well, leadership, what has to happen at this point, right, is that leaders have to again understand that it is not business as usual. Nothing is going to be business as usual. And the idea of going back to normal is a myth.
Mm,
What is normal really, right? What is normal? So one of the things that is really, really crucial is that um, what leaders really need to have right now to be able to lead properly in this disruption is soft skills. So we know that the further up you go in an organization, the less and less your hard skills is necessary. It's needed, yes, but not so necessary as your soft skills. So you have to know how to lead your people. You have to learn how to be collaborative. You have to learn how to be empathetic. You have to have emotional intelligence.
mm,
You have to learn to be culturally sensitive. And we also have to know that diversity and inclusion is not a nice to have feature.
mm,
It is really something real. And leaders who can get this right, that can get that soft part of leading right, are really going to be the leaders that will take their companies to the next level.
mm.
They are the leaders who will have their companies being around for the next 90 years. In 1930, I was reading this somewhere. In 1930, the average lifespan of a company was 90 years.
Mm.
Now it's like 25.
Yeah, yeah. And 25 is being generous.
Yeah, how do you get to that 25? How do you lead to get to those 25 years? And that is what leaders, those are some of the questions that leaders need to ask themselves. How do I lead to ensure that my organization is around for the next 25, 30 years? Is my culture supportive of that growth? And
Mm,
those are the things that they need to look at and then decide, okay, I don't have these things, so I need to put things in place to ensure that this company is in it for the long haul. I need to have the right people in the right place.
yeah. I love that you mentioned diversity and inclusion because one of the things I used to debate a lot on panels was the fact that a lot of companies embrace diversity and they embrace diversity as an optional thing to increase profits. And when you approach diversity in that way, then really the premise of diversity becomes a bit watered down or diluted because you're not in it for the best of the people, you're in it for the best of the company. So I do like where you mentioned diversity because of a lot of events that's happened in the last few years, and a lot of people really saying, well, actually this is taking a toll. Companies are now thinking, well, what can I do to really be inclusive and not be inclusive for profit, but to lead in a way that I embrace all of my people.
Yeah. And one of the things, Rochelle, is that, you know, how do you, and it could be a hard balance. How do you balance this? How do you get one segment of your employee population to understand the lived reality of the next segment of your employee population and really be able to bring them together? One of the things is we have to see people as people.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that is what we need. We need to see people simply as humans,
Yeah.
right? Before we start looking at all the other areas. Well, this one I pink, this one I red, you know, that kind of thing. We really need to see, okay, this is our next human being.
Yeah.
And I need to treat them just like I'm going to treat this next human being.
Yeah.
And we all have biases. We all have biases. And that's one of the things that permeates the organization when we are not aware and conscious of those biases that we have. Because you know we tend to want to gravitate towards the people who might look like us, might sound like us, might say the things that we want to hear. But the moment there is a person, and this isn't color, because diversity and inclusion is not all about color. It's not all about race. It's about everything that affects employees in the workplace. It really is. So if you have an employee who you go into a meeting and that person asks a lot of questions, they ask a whole lot of questions. People tend to want to like, oh my God, that you again with these questions, and kind of don't want to involve. But if we really step back a little bit and say, okay, there must be a reason why this person is like this, why this person is asking all these questions. Let me see what it is. And more often than not, I have to plug this here, more often than not, because we didn't hire using data, we didn't promote using data, we really don't know anything really about that employee besides what they show us. You know, there's this thing where they show you the iceberg with the little piece on top and the whole rest below.
Yeah.
That is what if we use data to hire, promote, develop. That whole big piece below is what the data will show us. So we really do, you know, as leaders, we really do need to think differently, think in different terms, have a different perspective of what leadership really is.
Yeah. And I like when you point that out, because it says that there's work to be done, not just on the individual side, as you said, but it might be saying that something is wrong with that project, with the way it's being communicated, that they're not quite getting it right. It might be that they haven't made that project or whatever they're working on fully accessible to everybody. It might be that leader isn't very well trained in communicating that project to everybody. So there's so many things there that could be involved that we don't often take into consideration, but sometimes a lot of leaders might just write that person off as a troublemaker rather than actually thinking, is the reason for their questions on their side, or is some of the onus on our side as well?
Exactly. And we could even lighten this to our education system, because really there's a link, right? So you know, there's a child in school who maybe can't sit still, sorry, or maybe ask a lot of questions. And the teacher sees that child as disruptive. So what do? They interact with all the other children and not that child. And what we do, we take that same thing that we've learned in the classroom right into the workplace with us. And as we go higher and get into positions of authority, we behave just like that teacher in primary school. So it really is everything comes full circle, and we have to decide we can't do this because this we can't lead like this anymore. It's not profitable to lead like this, and leaders who lead like this, I just really want to tell them you're leaving a lot of money on the table. You've got to redesign how you lead, how your organization looks.
Yeah, I mean, I see that firsthand, as you know, in lecture as well. So I see that firsthand when we have a group of really international students, because what we often find the way of doing things, the way of approaching a task in, let's say, an Eastern country versus a Western country was so different. So what we often found was that students from Western countries, they would get into a group with each other. And as soon as they suspected, let's say, for example, if they saw a student that was Chinese, I had some students come into me and saying, I don't want to work with them. They won't be able to get it done. So like in the same way you say, where we hand that down, that kind of leaving people out because we think that they'll be difficult to work with, or we don't want to take the time to get to break things down or to communicate it in a different way. As you said, we're losing a lot of money, one, but then on top of that as well, we're losing the ability to learn. So I imagine that a leader gains so much development from that process as well.
Definitely, definitely. If only that leader is open and willing to learn. Because, in a lot of organizations, we have wrong people in the wrong places. So if we ruled by ego consistently, then that leader who is totally ruled by ego, and now ego is not a bad thing. Ego is not a bad thing, but we have to be balanced. And if that leader is consistently ruled by their egos, then they are not going to be open to learning, and they're just going to keep taking their companies further and further down the rabbit hole.
Yeah, and that's a really scary thought. So what do you think then? Where's the best place that leaders can turn to for, let's say, support if they want to start building a powerful and inclusive organizational culture? Where would you direct them towards to really build out those skills as a leader in a disruptive age?
Well, I have a thing that I always say: you can't see the photo if you're in the frame. And a lot of times, what is wrong with our organization, not a lot of times, all the time, what is wrong with our organization is always a people issue. It is always a people issue. People make up your organization. So if you are having problems in your organizations, you cannot try to solve that problem from the level of your organization, because that's where it was created in the first place, right? So one of the things organizations have to do is be open to outside help, open to people coming in and assisting you in getting your culture right, in getting prepared for all the disruptions. Because let me tell you something, it's going to be consistent disruption from here on in. That's just what it is. And companies, organizations have to be resilient, and you have to create a culture of resilience. Your organization is not going to be resilient if it is not built into your culture. So you have to get outside help. You must get outside help. And so you invite somebody in, inviting a consultant to come in and look at your organization and give you some ideas on the things that that you need to tighten up on, the things that you need to change, and be open and willing to accept those changes, and get a coach. Really and truly, we cannot, this life, Rochelle, is not meant to be done alone. You can't lead alone because you alone don't know everything. So you need that support. You need a coach, you need a mentor, you need consistent training. You have to take consistent training. How would you feel if your doctor never upgraded their skills ever?
Yeah.
You ain't going to the doctor.
I'm very worried.
Yeah. So really and truly, you need to upgrade your skills. You need to equip your people with the knowledge and skills that they need so that the organization really is set to be able to bounce back from whatever may come, because things are coming. I can promise you that.
And I think, Judy, we are both living proof of that, because we're both coaches, we're both mentors, and we both have coaches and mentors. You know, you're right. No one person has the, I don't know, monopoly on knowledge. So,
and we have to start to be open. And I'm just saying this, especially for Caribbean organizations and Caribbean leaders. You can't do it by yourself.
Yeah.
Train your people, really train your people. And don't say, oh, well, we're in a recession, we're in a pandemic, we're in a recession. How do you expect to weather the next one that's going to come? Because it is coming. It is coming. So you have to equip yourself as well as your people, so that your organization not only survive, but thrive and evolve.
And you know, that is the one constant, that's the one constant that we can count on in this age. It's change. That's the only,
thing.
Yeah. Change and constant disruption.
Definitely.
Sorry, go ahead, Judy.
No, I'm saying definitely. Yes.
So what would you, in terms of, if you had to say to a leader, listen, these are the top 3 skills that you need to be trying to build if you want to really weather the next storm, or industry 0.0, although we're now talking about industry 4.0, though we're now talking about industry 5.0 as well. What are the top 3 skills that you should say, that you would recommend leaders start to develop if they want to be successful in a digital age? Well, not just digital, but a disruptive age.
Resilience. Resilience. You need, you really do need you need to be tough, and you need to be elastic. You need to put them 2 together, right? You need resilience. You need to know, you need to be able to deal with whatever is going to come, because stress, the stress, that comes with change is a lot. And you have to be able, as a leader, you have to be able to know how to bounce back from that, how to deal with that, change, and how to lead your people through that change. But you have to, it starts with you, right? So resilient. You have to be collaborative. This is not a siloed economy. This is no time for silos, right? You have to be collaborative, right? So you have to collaborate with your people, with your team, to get the results that you want. There's no, I am sending down an order. Not happening anymore. You have to collaborate so that everybody, you see, collaboration and communication, effective communication. That's those 2 for me go hand in hand. And then the heart. You can't lead without heart. You simply cannot lead without heart. Right? And when you lead with heart, it means that you're emotionally intelligent and emotionally sensitive to the needs of yourself first, and then the needs of others. Because we have a thing where we sometimes forget that leaders are humans and we only want them to put out, put out, put out, put out. I have a different approach and a different perspective. Leaders, you have to be emotionally intelligent first for you, right? You have to know when you need to take a break. You have to know when you should take that downtime. You have to know when to stop. You have to know what your boundaries are. So you first have to know that before you can extend that out to others. You are culturally sensitive. So you know that the different people in your organizations, in your circle, you have to be very culturally sensitive to what they're going through, what their needs are, because we're all different people. So you have to understand that. For example, I don't eat meat, and uh, if we're in a work setting and you know that I don't eat meat, and you're going to have a function and invite me and all you have is meat, then right? Or somebody, I'm just kind of using this, but you have a Muslim on your staff, you have a Hindu on your staff, you have all these different Christian denominations on your staff that, they all have different nuances. You had to be able to be culturally sensitive to all of that. And it's a lot, and you can only manage that by first learning to manage you. So you've got that, those for me are the top three that leaders now need to be able to operate successfully in this digital age. It is not so much about the hard skills, Rochelle, but it's really about the soft skills that enables you to use your hard skills a lot more productively.
Yeah, I like that you say to start with, do it for them first. That's so important, because one of the things I find that really helps, or that I hear people say also really help them, is when I turn things around. So for example, if I am thinking about how to treat my employee or an intern I'm working with or so forth, or a colleague I'm working with, I think, well, how would I like to be treated? Well, how would I feel within that situation? So similar to your example with meat, what messages is that company sending to you when they don't consider your needs within that setting? So things as simple as that can really send the wrong sort of message to employees. So I like that. And when you start with self, when you think about how these things make you feel, when you think about your own development and your own perspective, then you can really start to empathize and understand the position of others, or the impact things will have on them as well.
Yeah. And one of the things is that people who you see don't have are not empathetic towards other people. I can tell you with certainty they are not empathetic to themselves. So they first have to start with that healing of self. It always starts with self. For me, the starting point is self.
Yeah.
That's what the starting point is. Yeah.
Yeah. I like that. I like that. Thank you so much, Judy. We're just going to wrap up now. So you know what you got to tell me before we go. I hope you're ready.
Sorry, I don't have a funny story. That funny story. I don't have a funny one, but I think I have an interesting one. And it really is more of a learning experience for me early on in my consulting career. So I worked I was working in Trinidad, and I worked for an international consulting company. And so ever so often we would do an exchange of personnel. And I went up to work with manufacturing. It was a food manufacturing and ink manufacturing company. And my first day in the office, I got into the office and then they said, okay, well, you have to go now to the client. So they'd given me a car, but I was going to the client with another consultant. So we drove in his car. And when we got back to the so he brought me back to the office, and now this is night. And really, this is an example of being culturally sensitive. We got back to the office and he dropped me. I went into my car and he said bye and drove off. My first day, I have no idea where I am, where I'm going, nothing. So I said, okay, you can do this. I'm sure you can do this. So I got in the car, got on the freeway. I'm thinking, I don't know which way to go, left or right, but I did a little eeny, meeny, miny, moe, and I turned. And as I was driving and driving, I'm driving for like about an hour, and I'm thinking, this is too far, because I know that I didn't drive so much this morning. I eventually decided, you know what, let me get off. Let me take an exit, because I will be able to find a gas station or something that I can ask the directions.
Yeah.
I found the exit. I found a gas station. I drove into the gas station, and I'm looking around. So I'm trying to figure out, like, who am I going to ask? Who should I ask? And there's this young guy with a truck and the bonnet open, and I went over to him and I said, good night. Can you tell me where I am? And he said to me, where do you want to go? And I told him, and he said, okay, lady, you are so lost. I can't even tell you. I have to show you. I said, okay. When he was finished, he got into his car and told me to follow him. Now, this is faith. I swear to you, this is all faith, because I'm trusting now. This guy is going to take me where I really need to go.
This is in the US.
This is in the US. This is in California. This is in California. And so I followed him. He kind of got lost along the way. He stopped, asked a couple of questions. So I'm thinking, yeah, he's really taking me where I'm going. And he did take me there. And eventually when we got to where I'm like, yes, this is it. I know here now. He came out his truck and he came by the car and he said to me, don't you ever do what you did again tonight, because you may not be so lucky the next time.
I tell you, and in the States, my gosh, you've seen those horror movies, haven't you?
Yeah. So it was, and why I say it's an example of being culturally sensitive, right? The other consultant, he just kind of drove off and just like, okay, you could find your way, without really thinking, okay, she's not from here. This may be the first time that she's driving in the US. It's the first time that she's here. So how can I direct her? How can I guide her? You know, so it really is all around being culturally sensitive to each other. So
He should at least have asked if you'd be okay. Just like drop you off and disappear. Gosh. Well, thank God you're alive, Judy. I'm glad that I got to meet you.
There are good people in this world, Michelle.
Thank God that could have gone a completely different way, but thank you. Thank you, Jesus. All right. Thank you so much, Judy. And thank you again to our audience for joining us for another episode of Remotely Speaking Up. This has been Judy McCutcheon, and this week we've been talking about how we can empower people and leaders in a disruptive and digital age. So thank you. Take care for now and see you next week.